Am I the asshole? AITA for getting revenge on my neighbour. Judgment, asshole. This may be a long story because this has been going on for a year, but here goes. About a year ago I moved into a trailer park. It's in a very rural area which is good for me. I like peace and quiet, it's nice and tranquil. Up until my neighbour started to be a nuisance. It was this family which had a ton of kids, like at least 7 or 8 and a dog. A big dog, a Great Dane. It was fine for a while. They seemed okay. They invited me and some other neighbours for barbecues and everything. But as time passed, they got more and more annoying. First of all, their dog. They never watched their dog, they just left it outside. He pretty much wandered all over the trailer park. Sometimes their dog would come and play with my 2 dogs, but he also would come over and poop on my lawn, which is gross. I mean, it's bad enough having to pick up after my own dogs, but then I had to pick up their dog's crap too. So I just went over and asked them to not let their dog crap on my yard. But they got rude and defensive about it. Well, your dog comes over to our yard, which was true, but my dog doesn't crap on their lawn, just to play with their dog, which they said was okay. So things were tense after that. Speaking of their dog, it kept coming over to my yard and getting into fights with my pit bull, which is not good. You can't have these big dogs fighting like that. So I told them to keep their dog off my property. They never listened and kept letting their dogs run around the neighbourhood, and unfortunately the dog ran into the road and got hit by a car and passed away, which was sad because the dog was actually pretty friendly, just had poor boundaries. So they got 2 new dogs. 2 chihuahuas. They kept these 2 dogs outside 24 hours a day, during cold, heat, everything. They never let them in. The only place they were allowed to go was the tool shed. They could never come in their house. Their dog kept coming over to my yard, so I complained again. They put their dogs in shock collars. But these dogs made me miss the Great Dane, because these dogs bark at everything. It's like non-stop. All day it's just bark, 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 bark. I mean, I know dogs bark, but this was too much. Especially when the owners leave them out for hours or really days at a time, and don't do anything to stop it. That's not annoying, they're being a nuisance to the entire neighbourhood. So me and a couple of other neighbours visited them and asked them to control their pets. They said, "Well, call the police if you don't like it," and slammed the door. This went on for months. It got really bad because it was an all-day, everyday thing, so eventually we did call the property owner. So, property management visited them and told them to keep the noise down. It got to the point that I had to call the police or the property owner almost once a week. They'd come over and tell them to keep their dogs quiet. I mean, I know that dogs bark, but when it goes on for 2 or 3 hours at a time, then yeah, that's a nuisance. It's not like I was calling on the first bark or anything. It was also made worse by the fact that they would just leave the dogs alone and go away from the house, just leaving them out in the yard when they're not home. So this went once for about 4 months, and one time we called and they got a fine, a ticket. They started doing the right thing, for a couple of weeks at least. I finally had enough and called animal control and told them about the dogs being out and barking, and they took them away. I remember I went outside and saw the young kids, at least 5 or 6 were crying. "Why did the bad man take Lucy and Diaz away?" Then the mother pointed at me. "That man, he did it. He made them do it." So, after about a month, I got a visit from the property manager. They said my dog had been going onto their property. This was actually really bad timing because it was my son's birthday. I was having a cookout with the family and actually invited them as an apology. They just told me to go to hell. So I started cooking the burgers and setting up the picnic tables, and next thing I know, I see the property manager coming up along with a police officer. She told me that she got a complaint that my dog had been going on my neighbour's property. So I asked which dog it was, and said it was my pit bull, and that he was going over next door every day for the past 2 weeks. But the thing is, my pit bull actually passed away, like a month and a half prior to this. I actually looked at their trailer and saw them peeking out the window, while the manager was out with me. I mean, we have another dog, a corgi, but we keep him in the house or within my fenced backyard because he couldn't be trusted. He would wander off a lot. I explained the whole situation and she understood it, that they were getting revenge for getting their dog taken away, especially since the dog they complained about is dead. which was also a low blow to us because my son loved that pit bull, and he was so upset once he heard about the neighbour and it reminded him of his dog. So, after the party, I confronted them. I almost got into a fight with the dad. You know, if it wasn't in front of my kids right now, I'd kick your ass. So I walked out and he told me, "Watch your back." So after a couple of weeks, he started up again. His revenge on me. Keep in mind at this time I worked 2 jobs. One was an office job, the other was at the nursing home. I worked all night and would sleep during the day. And because of this, I don't like a whole lot of noise. I mean, some ambience is okay, but people being a nuisance is not okay. Here's how they got back at me. The whole clan, mum, dad and kids, all got in their driveway and just started screaming their heads off. Hooting, hollering and everything. And this woke me up, about 3 PM. I usually get up at 6 PM for work. I bought earplugs, but it got worse. They started blowing air horns and I swear I heard a saxophone in the noise. There was a chainsaw at one point as well. This was during the day. At night, when they weren't screaming, they would blast country music from their car radio. Full blast. I mean, I would sometimes leave at 8 PM and get home around 4:30 or 5 AM, and it was still playing full blast. This went on for almost a week and progressed each time. I thought they'd get bored, so I didn't call the police. You know, too much for hassle. But I did call the police. My son couldn't sleep. He was tired of it. They came, and even when they were over there, my neighbours still had their music playing. So anyway, they got a warning. A few weeks went by. I'm mowing my lawn, and his wife came up to me. She actually apologised and said the father had been drinking too much and everything, that she's ashamed of how petty he's been and that she threatened to divorce him. Then the husband came up and grabbed her by her arm. He scolded her for apologising to the bastard. He told me how much the kids love those dogs and that I'm a homewrecker and his wife is divorcing him because of me. So later that day, he dragged out his amplifier to the porch and his guitar and played over and over, full blast. So that night I had enough. I knew the police would be no help, so I grabbed the trash can from my bathroom, full of used toilet paper, and dumped it all over their lawn. They also sent a fake phone call to their home phone, pretending to be the wife's lover. Then the next morning the fireworks went off. They argued. She started screaming, "I'm tired of this," and she divorced him and took the kids with her. He started screaming that he loved her and to come back. "You can't leave me! You can't leave me! Come back! Come back!" Anyway, he had a bit of an emotional breakdown on the lawn. Then he started blaming me for what happened. To top it off, I'm actually considering hitting on the ex-wife. So am I at fault here? So am I the arsehole for escalating this feud so badly that I caused a man to get divorced?